Hello, Amina. Welcome and thank you so much for giving us your time. Eurobug. My name is Kelvin Akpaloo, creative director for Eurobug, and it's a pleasure to have you here on this consultation. This consultation is around a project that we have, international project K2 Erasmus Plus, with our coordinators, the main coordinators of this project from being Iceland. And this project is called the Inside Out Project. It's more around the topic of outdoor education, how you use outdoor activities to really empower migrants or to also get young people that does not have employment or economic having like economic issues or education, and how to bring them together, integration. And I think that your organization does it phenomenally, SARI. So and that's the kind of like job that you do, and you knowing you personally close to, I know that you two sports is something that is like really, you take it really wholly into. So for us, it was something that we wanted to kind of like ask how SARI does all of these things. But before that, we go into questions. I would like to, if you can introduce yourself and your
Yeah,
organization also for us, please. Thank you.
perfect. Thanks for having me. My name is Amina Moustafa. I'm on the board of SARI, Sport Against Racism Ireland, but I currently hold a position of Director of Development. So that involves creation of experiential learning material, really intentional design within the organization, looking at our strategic plan and how we can have as much impact through our activities, as well as scaling that impact across the island of Ireland.
Wow. Thank
Mhm.
you so much. And maybe to go straight into like what SARI does.
Yeah.
Um, could you tell us a little bit about what SARI or what activities or what are some of your methodologies that you use in
Mhm.
order to bring young migrants and everyone together? And also, I don't know if you mentioned it, sorry. What does SARI actually mean, like SARI in itself?
So SARI stands for Sport Against Racism Ireland, and it was set up in 1997, which was the European Year Against Racism. And at the time, it was set up in response to a rise in racist incidents in Ireland, um, and has since then, for 26 years now, been using sport as a tool for education and for learning to address racism and discrimination. So it's using sports power as a universal language, as a way of bringing people together to address some of the stereotypes that we have in society, to encourage mutual understanding, and doing that without the need for a universal language. It's fun, it's playful, but also you can embed intentional learning into the design of the activities. So, just a bit of background in terms of how I got involved. I started back in 2014, and this will give you an idea of some of the programs that we run and the impact that it can have. I was always involved in sport, but I never really had considered the power that sport can have to promote social change. Um, I used to be involved in like football, like on the street, but not professionally or anything. I did a bit of taekwondo and running here and there. But I was invited to a project back in 2014 called the Hijabs and Hat Tricks Project, which is still ongoing. And that project was set up in 2014 when FIFA had lifted their hijab ban, preventing women from playing um, uh, football with the hijab previously. So the project was set up to encourage young Muslim women to play football. Um, and it focused more on more than just being a football team. So uh we weren't focused just on learning football skills. While that was important, a lot of the women were coming there with very little experience of playing football, because they maybe have previously been in, like had barriers to their participation in football anyway, including the ban. Um, but we were encouraged to, as an organization, the organization put some intentional design in around how we can create an inclusive space. So what that looked like is a focus on bonding between players versus just, your regular training on the pitch. So while we had training, sometimes we went to local football stadiums. We went for dinner together. We also asked ourselves questions. So we had a facilitated dialogue around, like, who am I? How am I perceived by society? How do I want to be perceived? And then oftentimes, because trust had been built between players, that when issues arise or when we needed to talk about something, we felt comfortable to. And then SARI also connected us in with other organizations like the Irish Network Against Racism, or a researcher that's collating experiences of racism or discrimination in Irish society. So I, at the time, had contributed to a piece of research on experiences of Islamophobia in Ireland, and I could speak about my experience of being a young Muslim woman in Ireland. So that's just one program, and that project actually is centered around co-design. So a lot of the players supported the design of the project, which led to us to avoid assumptions, of what the needs are of a particular group, that the players within that group can inform, the organization, because they play a key role in the organization's program activities. So that included us designing our training kit, and we're able to feed in our own interpretations of modesty, because there was no one way that people feel comfortable wearing their kit, so that we had all voices involved in that decision. So that's just one example. We also currently run anti-discrimination workshops, and that would be very much linked to that idea that is in the Inside Out project around outdoor education and experiential learning. So we recognize that there's a gap sometimes in education system to address the topic of racism and discrimination, and that issues can emerge sometimes where teachers aren't equipped or supported to be able to address the issues, whether that be the lack of representation of teachers of diverse teachers in the education system, with Irish being a language requirement to become a teacher, but then also within their own teaching curriculum, that sometimes anti-racism training isn't embedded within their course. So we provide workshops for schools, primarily primary schools. So we start at a very young age to bring some of the learning out onto the pitch or into the PE class, something that the young people feel is fun, but we encourage the class to consider certain aspects of what, for example, what discrimination is and what does that feel like, and when someone asks you to exclude someone from a game, what that can feel like, and that sometimes it can be perceived as a joke, but when you see someone's reaction and you yourself experience it, understanding that, exclusion, while it might feel harmful at the beginning, can really have long-lasting impacts. And then putting some of that learning that they have into practice. So we created games that's focused on fair play, equality, and respect, and that it being seen as fun. Again, that they're learning while playing football, or handball or physical activity, but we are pausing the games at different points and asking questions about what this could mean, or what it felt like for them in their body, and really connecting the physical activity and the experience to some learning. Um, and yeah, so we're linking in with existing or schools across the country to deliver these through physical activity and outdoor education. Oh, I think you're on mute.
Sorry. Thank you so much for this inside information, and also what SARI is doing for the community, for the young people, and in itself. So from what I'm listening, it seems that your methodologies, as an organization, the methods that you're doing is really working and is having a big impact on the society. So one thing that I want to ask is that what are the benefits that you guys are getting, like that is coming to SARI as an organization? What are the benefits that you see that is coming to you as one of like the board member, one of the board members of SARI that's coming to you personally, and maybe seeing on your coaches or your workers, and also the benefit that you see, maybe you've not heard yet, or maybe you've been told, but from the young people or the migrants or the community that you're working with. Also, what are the benefits that all of your methodologies are having an impact on them?
So impact on the organization and the internal staff members and participants that is linked to a lot of our programs. So whether that be our hijabs and hat tricks program, we have another program called the Soccer Nights program, which is for young men and boys from socioeconomic backgrounds, migrant backgrounds, or asylum seeker, refugee backgrounds. We provide weekly training sessions, but within that design of that program, we also have an opportunity for players that actively come to our training sessions that want to take on positions of leadership. And we provide employability support for them to take up employment opportunities within the organization. So oftentimes for players, as well as developing their skill as a player, there's also an opportunity to develop their skill as a coach. So if they're interested in that, we provide coaching badges for them, or well, training for them to go and take up their coaching badges. And then within the organization, we have different programs where they can be employed, so whether that be some of the players that are a part of our weekly program and they're a participant, they can then take on a leadership position elsewhere or even become a coach of their own program that they're involved in. So the same happened with me when I first joined hijabs and hat tricks, and not long after I had coaching, or I got my coaching badges and started delivering training within the organization. Oftentimes as well, like one of the benefits can be linking into other organizations that you weren't aware of, so the likes of INAR, the Irish Network Against Racism, or universities, or there's internships opportunities often that are presented or offered to SARI players. Even the positive benefit of being able to play internationally sometimes. So we got to play compete as part of a Fair Play Cup in Germany, which is using sports methodology to promote fair play and equality. And because that's built into the design of a lot of our activities, we were invited to have an Irish delegation go over and play in Germany. And in 2024, we will have an Irish delegation going over to be involved in a side project as part of the Olympics in Paris for 2024. And so those are some of the benefits for players. But what we really benefit from as an organization is the co-design aspect to our program, that, trying to uncover some barriers to participation, can come from providing a space where participants from whether it be migrant communities, refugee communities, or people from diverse backgrounds, they're bringing, their own lived experience to spaces and feeding in, their own lived experience from their community to be able to address some of those challenges to participation and feed that into design of our program. So our anti-discrimination workshops include lived experiences of what it's like for some of our players, living in Ireland, and some of the journeys that they've been on. Like our head coach often shares his experience of coming to the organization with very little English language, and then through playing with people and the invitation to come and play, is, a part of what led him to becoming a coach and then becoming a coach or a head coach of our organization, and the transformation that can have, that there isn't pressure as well when you're working within an organization where everyone is welcoming and understands what inclusive practice is, that, you feel you can learn at your own pace with different things, but then also providing opportunity and that your voice is valued um uh in within the organization. So every aspect of our program has an element of co-design where our coaches and members of migrant or diverse communities are really having a decision-making role or feeding in to the design of that activity that impacts on their community.
Wow. This is remarkable, to be honest. Like for me myself, I remember I came to I know SARI, and I came to some of one of your like football tournaments. Um and with the Kilkenny group, and unfortunately we didn't win. We didn't win. But on that day you could see the kind of like SARI, you don't just, it's not just like an organization that you're just trying to do a project. You're actually creating a community,
Mm.
and it seems that there, even every single person, every single organization that came, or young people that was there at the time, really felt like it was like a festival, that we are all like there to, a
Mhm.
diverse and inclusive environment where we all feel free. The football, even when somebody's get injured, it wasn't, even though football is a competitive sport, but at the same time it wasn't a competitive environment. And that is something that for me I really enjoy, when I was playing and when I was around SARI, the organization. So looking at all of these amazing things that you are doing for the community, there has to be some challenges. There has to be some challenges that the organization faces. Also, not just organization, you individual, like even the individual people that is in it, like as a board member, what are some of the challenges that also you face, that the organization face and you face, and maybe you think that other the participants might face, or and also how do you overcome these challenges that will allow, for example, the participants to trust SARI, that okay, we are coming into your environment and I feel safe. So what are the challenges, and how do you overcome these challenges in order to gain trust from the community?
Um, well, I can give two examples from different levels within the organization, and I won't go on for too long because I see the timers come up. But one when I was a coach within the organization, one of the challenges that I had, I used to run the Hijabs and Hat Tricks program, so I was the project coordinator. Part of that role was recruitment, and I would have trainings for the women. And at certain point in the year, there would be a lack of participation or low numbers of participation, which led to some of the trainings being cancelled. And as a coach, that can be frustrating, particularly when, you're very keen on running a session, and so are the players that come. And like your automatic assumption is that, well, one, you're trying to recruit people and you know that people aren't coming, but your assumption is that they're not interested in the training session, um, and like that can be a default. But I remember, because of what I was taught while I was involved in the organization, is, that very similar to what you said, where we've created this sense of belonging, sense of community, and that we had this trust built. So instead of just assuming that, like I went and reached out to some of the players that weren't going, um, as a coach, and reached out and asked if there was anything that, like how they were getting on, and if there was anything going on that was preventing them from attending, or if they were interested in joining the training session, just reaching out and checking in. And because I had asked that simple question of like, how are you getting on? Is everything okay? I discovered that some of the women that weren't coming to the training session weren't coming because the training time hadn't changed, but daylight hours in Ireland, you know, it gets dark
Yeah.
at a certain time, and that it was very far from some people's houses, and that their parents, or maybe they didn't feel comfortable going out really late at, well, not really
Yeah.
late at night, but you know, when it's very dark
Midnight.
outside. Um, and because I had asked that, I recognized that was a barrier for this particular person. I had changed the training time to a Saturday in the morning. And then loads of other women started coming. And I realized then that, you know,
Wow.
doing that small tweak, because we had built the trust, um, where people felt like they could say, you know, what was going on for them. Um, that then I was able to go back to training, because that was the one of the issues that was coming up for people. And it was also a reminder as a coach to not assume the barriers for people, you know, that the best thing to do is, you know, involve them and hear their voice, um, to overcome some of the challenges that are, or uncover some of the hidden barriers to their participation that you weren't even aware of. A similar experience happened when I was delivering a session, which involves a lot of learning and dialogue. So we play a game and we talk about it afterwards. And I remember when I first introduced the game, I did a lot of talking and less so of demonstration. And I remember just seeing blank faces looking back at me. And in my head, I was initially thinking, oh, this is going to be a hard session because I'm not going to get any engagement. But as the session went on, I realized the group I was working with didn't have um a high level of English. And the whole time I was talking through English and wasn't demonstrating. And then when I had like copped that or noticed it, I then focused on moving and demonstrating the game. And then all of a sudden, like, you know, a lot more people were joining in. And I realized, you know, then that, you know, you gotta um really it, and it can be difficult sometimes, but like stop and avoid, you know, or be aware of what assumptions you have in that space. And yeah, that like that the transformation that it can have when you stop and really ask yourself, like, what is holding, what could be holding this back, base other than what you assume, you know, and really questioning your assumptions. um at a board level, or as an organization, I think some of the challenges now is, you know, their policy, that we're really promoting policy change, and we're trying to get our work out there, particularly around, you know, inclusive education, but also experiences of racism and discrimination. And um I know now we have a national action plan against racism that was just launched last year. And we're trying to leverage that action plan to really push for more anti-racism training or inclusive practices in certain spaces. And to, you know, be a bit more vocal when it comes to issues that are coming up for our community, that we're working with, but to see change happen rather than it be, you know, echo in a void, that there's response to it from policymakers.
Wow. I think from what I'm hearing now, what I also grasping is the fact that as you mentioned, policy changes, um, that or policies that are within the country, you know,
Mm,
it's a challenge that affects the organization. And also, you also see that when it comes into the people that you work with, the young people that you work with, they face their own personal challenges at home that could hinder them from taking part of the activity. So your way is that also always making sure that the organization is actually fighting or pushing for policy changes. But at the same time, what I love when you're talking was the fact that you don't just finish a project and let them go home. And then, as you said, not assuming, you know, but actually the fact that you interact with them personally and ask them for their needs or ask them for the challenges that is affecting them not to be able to get involved, and then working on those challenges, as you mentioned, the tweak is really,
mm,
really impactful because most organizations see participants as, or some organizations see participants as just projects, you know. And I was actually in, this was actually also mentioned in one of the conversations that I had with an organization, and then they also mentioned that, yeah, you shouldn't see participants as project, but part of the whole community. So I think it's the same thing that you're mentioning here, and which is remarkable, you know. So then my last question is not basically, it's not even a question, but it's more like seeking of your wisdom, you know. Is what would be a message that you would give to other organizations? I know that there is like 2 minutes left, but what would be your message for other organizations that wants to use outdoor activities, or to implement that into their organizations, and how should they do it all? What would you say?
Mhm. Well, initially the message for organizations just in general was going to be nothing about us without us. And it's often used in the spaces that I'm working in terms of encouraging its participants to be um, uh, like active in the decision-making process, or decision makers, giving them agency, in the design. But if it's in relation to outdoor education and methodology, I would say really consider the power of sport. Sport, as Nelson Mandela said, has the power to change the world, and can bring communities together when little else can. And I think, if you really reflect on your own experience, think about ways that you can, like, what have you learned as an individual? Why do you participate in sport, for example? And asking yourself those questions can really help you design educational material that can be fed into movement activities, or outdoor activities, or sports activities, that a tiny bit of thinking beforehand can really help the learning that your participants can get from outdoor education or experiential learning opportunities.
Wow. Thank you so much, Amina. It's a pleasure. And again, on behalf of Eurobug and our partners in the project Inside Out, we really appreciate your time and SARI's time. And we will be definitely following and checking SARI as time goes on. But again, thank you. Thank you so much for your time. And
Thanks,
see
Kelvin.
you.
You.
Bye.